Pauline Corgan was an ordinary young woman who grew up on St. Martin, a small island off the coast of England. Her father, a fisherman, worked hard to send her to school on the mainland, and by 21 she had become a teacher in a town called Falmouth. But teaching brought her no joy. The children exhausted her, and the work felt like a burden she could barely carry. Her landlady, Mrs. Perry, noticed something troubled Pauline and asked what was wrong. Reluctantly, Pauline explained that Kevin Winter, a wealthy neighbor from back home, wanted to marry her. He was more than 20 years older, but her parents insisted he was the best match she could find. Pauline confessed that she hated teaching but didn't love Kevin enough to marry him. After many long conversations, Mrs. Perry convinced her that life would be easier as the wife of a rich man than as a struggling teacher. In June, Pauline went home and agreed to the engagement. Letters passed between her and Kevin, and the wedding was set for the first Tuesday in September. When August ended, she showed no excitement about returning home. She travelled to Hastings on the Friday before her wedding, only to discover the boat to St. Martin had left early. With no other boat until Monday, she found a small hotel and went for a walk around town. A voice called her name from behind. She turned to see Edward Stowe, a young man she had known at training college. He seemed hurt when she told him about her upcoming marriage. Edward reminded her that he had cared for her deeply, and though he had never proposed, he had always intended to. Pauline admitted quietly that she had wanted to marry him too. Edward grew passionate, insisting she shouldn't marry Kevin. He begged her to marry him instead, right away, that very evening. Caught up in the moment and desperate to escape her dreary future, Pauline agreed. They travelled to Wetwood, where Edward lived, and by Monday morning they were married. Pauline felt a rush of fear thinking about her parents' reaction, but there was no turning back now. They hurried to catch the boat to St. Martin, arriving in Hastings with 2 hours to spare. Edward decided to go for a swim in the sea while they waited. Pauline watched him disappear into the water, but when she looked again, he was gone. She called for help, but no one could find him. His clothes had been washed away by the tide. Edward had drowned. Pauline stood on the beach in shock, struggling to believe what had happened. The last 3 days felt like a dream. Had she really married Edward? She could barely remember his face. Numb and confused, she boarded the boat home. On board, she overheard passengers talking about a man who had drowned that day. Her worst fears were confirmed. Kevin Winter was waiting on the boat to greet her. Panicked, Pauline slipped the wedding ring off her finger before he saw it. When they reached the island, her parents welcomed her warmly, excited about the wedding the next day. Pauline tried several times to tell them the truth, but the words wouldn't come. That night, alone in her room, she realized she didn't have the courage to confess. By midnight, she decided her secret would stay buried. The next day, she married Kevin Winter. During the wedding dinner, Kevin announced they would honeymoon in Hastings. Pauline's heart sank, but she had no choice but to agree. When they arrived, they struggled to find a hotel because of the tourist crowds. Finally, they found one that seemed strangely empty. Kevin requested the best room with a sea view. The landlady hesitated, but said she would arrange it if they went for a walk first. When they returned, Pauline noticed a hat hanging on the back of the door. It looked exactly like Edward's. Her heart raced. She felt faint and asked Kevin to fetch smelling salts from a nearby shop. As soon as he left, she called the maid and asked about the hat. The girl explained it belonged to a gentleman in the next room. When Pauline asked why she couldn't hear him, the girl whispered that he was Dead, the young teacher who had drowned the day before. His body had been brought to the hotel, which was why no other guests were staying there. Pauline was horrified. That night, she lay in bed between the two men she had married, Kevin on one side and Edward's body through the wall on the other. The honeymoon was miserable, but they returned home and tried to settle into married life. Pauline grew comfortable with her new wealth and status. Months passed, and she almost forgot about Edward. Then, one evening, a workman stopped her in the garden. He had been the witness at her wedding to Edward. He recognized Kevin and realized Pauline had married two men. He began asking for money to keep her secret. Pauline paid him several times, but when he demanded more, she refused. Terrified that Kevin would discover the truth, Pauline decided to confess everything. She found him and told him about Edward, about the secret marriage and the drowning. To her shock, Kevin didn't react with anger. Instead, he jumped up and danced around the room with joy. Confused, Pauline asked what he meant. Kevin confessed that he too had been hiding a secret marriage. Years ago, he had married a woman in Hastings who had recently died. Worse still, he had 5 grown daughters. He had never told her about daughters he now wanted to bring home for Pauline to teach. Pauline's heart sank. She had escaped one trap only to fall into another. The next day, Kevin's 5 daughters arrived, plain, uneducated, and difficult. Pauline realized she was condemned to a life of endless teaching in her own home, married to a man she didn't love, haunted by the memory of the husband who had drowned, and punished forever for that one moment of madness when she had said yes.